On July 7, 2017, at 11:55 p.m., Air Canada Flight 759 proceeded to land at San Francisco International Airport, but not on the runway, but on 4 airplanes parked near it, which were packed with more than 1,000 passengers, but after landing. How did the pilots lose their way from the runway? Why did their flight's automatic landing system and air traffic control give no response, and will 1,150 people be brutally killed in this accident due to the collision of 5 planes?
Questionable landing involving an Air Canada plane at the San Francisco airport.
This call at San Francisco International Airport. This Air Canada flight was cleared to land Friday, but the pilot mistakenly lined up the plane for a taxiway next to the runway.
Friday night, it was in fact a very close call. 4 other passenger jets loaded with passengers and fuel lined up on that taxiway.
Plane that almost landed on top of 4 jets on the taxiway at SFO.
An Air Canada plane came to slamming into other jets.
A near miss at SFO. A flight came close to hitting other planes while coming in for a landing.
The story begins on July 7, 2017, when Air Canada Flight 759 departs from Toronto International Airport, heading towards San Francisco International Airport. It was a 25-year-old Airbus A320 aircraft whose condition was quite good, although it lacked some modern systems. It was a routine flight of 5 hours, and both pilots had the experience of landing the plane at San Francisco Airport. This plane with 135 passengers and 3 crew members takes off successfully from Toronto Airport. The weather was good. The visibility was also good, and almost all the passengers in the flight were sleeping peacefully, but they were unaware that the last 30 minutes of this flight are going to write the future, not only of them but also of 1,000 passengers aboard 4 other aircraft parked in San Francisco. Let us understand the runway structure of this airport in detail because it will play an important role. There are 4 runways in the cross-section of each other. Runway 19 right, 19 left, 28 right, and 28 left, but only 2 runways can be used at a time, which are parallel to each other. If the wind blows from the south, then runways 19 right and 19 left are open for takeoff and landing, and when the wind blows from the westerly direction, then runways 28 right and 29 left are used. On the day of 7th July, when Canada Flight 759 reached San Francisco, the wind was blowing from the west. That is, the correct direction for the landing of the flight was east, because the landing of the plane is always done in the opposite direction of the wind. In such a situation, when the flight took off, it disrupted the air traffic of San Francisco Airport. When he contacted the control, he was given permission to land on runway 28 right.
Good evening, Air Canada 759 with you. Have a message, reach visual 28 right.
Canada 759, system standing 28 right, clear to land, 2708.
Now the thing to note here is that at that time it was around 11:30 p.m. and due to there being not many flights, runway 28 was closed for maintenance, due to which the lights were also off. That is, now only one runway was in working condition. Friends, we all know that when the runway is busy, the next flight that takes place is near the runway. They stand on the small taxiways built and wait for their turn. Similarly, at San Francisco Airport, first there was a taxiway, then runway 28 left, after which runway 28 right, and finally another taxiway was built. Now, because runway 28 left's maintenance was going on, hence along with it, the first taxiway was also closed. That is, at that time only 2 road lights were working at the airport. The first was runway 28 right, and the second was the taxiway built very close to it. Oh, in such a situation when a TC took flight 759. When the pilot was given permission to land on runway 28, he made a big blunder. Yes, he had already landed at this airport before, so he knew that the parallel lights of the 2 runways work, but on that day, runway 28 left was closed. The pilot mistook the right runway for the left runway and the taxiway for the right runway, and aligned his plane towards the same taxiway, where at that time 4 planes were waiting for the runway to be clear for takeoff, including United Airlines Flight 1 and Philippines Airlines Flight 115, consisted of United Kingdom Airlines Flight 863 and United Kingdom Flight 1118. which together had more than 1,000 passengers on board, all with full fuel tanks. And they were unaware of that Air Canada Flight 759 was heading rapidly towards them. The pilot of Flight 759 had made a mistake in identifying the runway in the dark night, but the question is why ATC did not correct him. For this, we have to understand this incident very carefully. The information about the closure of runway 28 left was already given to pilot of 759. It was mentioned in the note given before takeoff of Flight 759. Actually, it is a kind of notice which is given to the pilot about any change in the airport or its surroundings. Usually this notice is of several pages. Because of this, sometimes it becomes difficult to read and understand every information properly, and the same happened with the pilot of Flight 759, and this was his second biggest blunder. Now, the Flight 759 was given the permission of landing because the weather was clear and due to complete control of landing. Experienced pilots are able to land well, but still ILS, i.e. instrumental landing system, is turned on in the flight so that if there is any mistake, then it will be automatic landing. The system gives a warning to the pilot, but now the third big mistake is made by the pilot, in which he forgets to turn on the ILS. Hence, when he chose taxiway instead of runway 28 right, there was no warning at all. But the planes parked ahead and a TC could have also warned the pilot of Flight 759, so why didn't they do so? The reason behind this is the foster city of San Francisco, where there are many tall buildings, while at the time of landing, the pilots also continuously reduce the altitude of the plane. This is why, before aligning the flight with runway 28 right or 28 right, or 28 left, pilots first fly the plane further to the extreme right to avoid flying over Foster City, and then they have sufficient time for alignment. For this reason, ATC and the planes parked ahead found this normal and couldn't catch the blunder made by Flight 759. Now, gradually both the distance and altitude between the runway and the plane were decreasing. Then at about 11:50 p.m., the pilot of Philippines Airlines noticed that Air Canada, the plane, was not steering itself to the right of runway 29. So it turned on its plane's landing lights to signal to Flight 759 that it was a taxiway with 4 planes already in place. The matter came to light, and the pilot of 759 immediately contacted a TC and said that we could see some lights on the runway.
And Tower, just want to confirm this Air Canada 759, we see some lights on the runway there across the runway. Can you confirm the clear to land?
But the ATC operator also made the biggest mistake of his career, and without checking the position of the flight, he said that the runway was completely empty.
Canada 759, confirmed clear to land runway 28 right. There is no one on 28 right, flight view.
रात के करीब 11:55 पर जब फ्लाइट 759 एयरपोर्ट से सिर्फ चंद सेकंड्स की दूरी पर थी, तभी टैक्सीवे पर खड़े चारों पायलट्स को पता चल गया कि जहाज के पायलट ने टैक्सीवे को ही रनवे समझ लिया और वो हमारे प्लेन के ऊपर ही लैंड करके हर किसी को मौत के घाट उतार देंगे। तभी सबसे आगे खड़ी यूनाइटेड एयरलाइंस फ्लाइट 1 के पायलट ने तुरंत ही कम्युनिकेशन सिस्टम को ऑन किया और एटीसी से कहा कि ये बंदा क्या कर रहा है और ये रनवे की जगह टैक्सीवे की तरफ
heading towards the taxiway instead of the runway.
Where's this guy going? He's on the taxiway.
By now, the pilots of all 4 planes were beating fast because they could not move forward in such a short time, but luckily the ATC officer immediately heard the message of the pilot of United Airlines Flight 1, and there was a command to cancel the landing of Canada Flight 759 and go around.
Air Canada, go around.
Hearing this, the pilot immediately canceled the landing and raised the lever and increased the altitude again. Friends, you will be shocked to know that when the pilot started to open the lever, when he did this, he was only 10 feet above the second and third flights, and if he had delayed this task by even 5 seconds, Flight 759 would have collided with Philippines Airlines Flight 115 and United Airlines Flight 863. What would have happened next? If that had happened, this accident would have taken the lives of many innocent people. Yes, if Flight 759 had collided with the second and third plane parked on the taxiway, there would have been a huge explosion in all 3 planes. After that, the rapidly disintegrating wreckage of Flight 759 would have pushed the other 2 planes forward and backward, causing a severe collision with the 1st and 4th planes, setting them ablaze as well. Some experts believe that this disaster would have unfolded in less than 30 seconds dot, and the blast of these 5 planes would have caused such a dangerous explosion that about 1,150 passengers aboard would have burnt to ashes within a few minutes, but luckily this accident was averted. But now the question is that how did the pilot make such a big mistake? Some experts believe that the pilots of Air Canada Flight 759 were extremely fatigued that day. The first officer hadn't rested for 12 hours, and the pilot hadn't rested for 19 hours. Meanwhile, their body clocks were set to Toronto's local time, where it was 3 a.m., which could have caused them to experience body fatigue. That is why they got distracted from the landing process, while the pilot's non-notification and ATC's indifference were also some of the reasons for this accident. Friends who had a hand in averting the biggest air incident in history, the quick action of the pilot, and ATC, or the coincidence of 1,150 people. If you liked this case study, then support our efforts by liking and sharing it, and by subscribing to our channel for such interesting stories.